In this lesson, I will introduce you to the customizing options available in SAP for availability check. There are different customizing objects which can control different things. One of the objects is the ATP checking control. This customizing object will control at which stage of the production order the ATP will be carried out and how. You can have various ways to perform the ATP check. You can do it automatically or manually. You can do it for a certain component from your order, or you can do it for the entire order. You can do it in single processing, like doing one order at a time, or mass processing, like multiple orders in the same time, and so on. And all these various ways which ATP can be performed, they are controlled via the ATP checking control. You have a production order with multiple operations and the components assigned to the operations. And based on the order quantity, SAP will determine the required quantity and the required dates for your components. So far, it's nothing new. When and how the ATP check is carried out, this will be controlled via the ATP checking control. You can customize different behaviors for the creation, for the change, or for the release stages of the production order. Let me give you some examples. You can set up events on which the ATP check is carried out automatically. You can say that each time the order is saved, the ATP check is carried out. Or when the order is released, the ATP check is carried out automatically. Or you can set up the process in such a way that the ATP check is done only manually. There are different available customizing options related to this in the ATP checking control. And now let's jump into customizing and let's take a closer look at the ATP checking control functions. The transaction code used for accessing the customizing options is SPRO. I can either maintain the transaction code here in the transaction bar and press enter, or if I don't know the transaction but I want to find it through the menu tree, I can go in the tools, customizing, IMG, and SPRO, execute projects. I will double click on it, and here I need to go in the SAP reference IMG, where IMG stands for Implementation Guide. Now you are in the SAP's customizing section, where you have the option of customizing every area of a company. In the future lessons, we will go to most of these customizing options, but now we will focus on the production area with an emphasis on the ATP check. I will navigate now to the production. Shop floor control, operations, and availability check. Here are all the customizing objects which are used in the ATP check. We have the checking group, the checking rule, the scope of check, the checking control, and defining checking rules for backorder processing. We will explore them all in the next lesson, but now let's take a look at defining the checking control. In this screen, we see that the checking control is defined based on three parameters. We have the plant, the order type, and the business function. The plant parameter allows us to have different settings from one plant to the other. This is very useful because SAP is mostly used by large companies, which have different plants all around the world. For this complex environment, it is important to have this option of having different customizing for each plant based on the local preferences. The order type will allow having different ATP behaviors based on the order type. And this comes very handy because usually different production order types are created for different processes or scenarios. And these scenarios can have different ATP check requirements. The business function allows us to set the required behavior during the order release, the order creation, and what happens each time when I make a change in an order or save. The standard order for discrete manufacturing is PP01. Let's use now the position button to look for the ATP check control in the plant 1000 and the production order PP01. PP01, and I press continue. I will select now both of them and I will start exploring. This is the checking control for the order creation based on the business function 1, which stands for check availability during the order creation. We have in this screen 3 different sections for each type of resource required in manufacturing. The first one is material availability, the second one is production resources and tools availability, and the third one is capacity availability. All the 3 types of resources have the automatic ATP check set up as no check. See here, here, and here. This means that they will not be checked automatically during the order creation, and they can be checked manually at any point in time. In this lesson, we will study the components availability, but don't worry because the same principles that are applied to the material components are applied also to the capacities and to the production resources and tools. In the material availability section, if you want to activate the automatic ATP check for changes, you can select the check material availability when saving order. This means that each time you will do a change in your production order, when you save the order, the ATP check will be carried out automatically. If you don't have here this no check option on, the ATP will be checked automatically each time you create a new production order. The checking rule represents the link between the ATP check control and the scope of check. The scope of check is a customizing object which determines which MRP elements are used in the ATP calculation. But we will cover into more detail the checking rule and the scope of check in the next lessons. The component check has 2 options. One is the ATP check and the second one is check against planning. We will stick now to the ATP check, and this is because the second option it's used in the scenario in which you want to perform the ATP based on a forecast. The collective conversion is a very good setting, which allows you to control what happens when you are converting in mass multiple planned orders into production orders and you are missing resources. Let's see what options do we have here. By choosing the first option, you allow the user to decide what to do if the materials are missing. In this case, the user will get a warning message on which he can allow or not the conversion each time that materials are missing. The second option allows you to convert the planned orders into production orders even if materials are not available without getting any prompts. But if your company says that no order should go on the shop floor unless all the resources are available, then you might want to go with option 3, which says no creation if material is missing. In this case, all the time when you will have materials missing, the user will get an error message, meaning that he cannot release that order unless all the components are available. So these are the main settings in the tracking control. And now let's go back and let's take a look now at our second business transaction, which is for releasing. Here we have the business transaction 2, and basically we have the same kind of settings as in the previous. And basically we have the same kind of settings for release than for order creation. Now let me go back. I don't want to save my changes, and I will go back to my main screen. Now you understand the role of the ATP checking control in controlling when and how the ATP check is performed. You also understand the customizing options available here in a logical manner. In the next lesson, we will continue the customizing journey with another customizing object called the scope of check. And I will show you how to set up which MRP elements will be used in the ATP calculation.